all your school rugby, all in one place. This is NextGenXV.
Hello and welcome to Rugby School for a special edition of the NextGenXV podcast. I am Angus Savage and I'm joined by the Headmaster of Rugby School, Peter Green. Peter, who was at Uppingham when I was there, which is unlucky for you, but very lucky for me because it means we've been having a bit of a chat about the old days at Uppingham, and now you're here at Rugby School, and what a wonderful setting.
Yeah, the most important thing is it's made him feel old, not me. Okay,
it's made me feel very old, very old. We're just remembering it's 20 years ago. That's
20 years ago since I left. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was there from Christmas 1995, so January 1996 to 2002. Ran the first 15 there with Neil Guttridge over a number of years. Even went unbeaten, which was
Heady
jolly
days
good.
at Uppingham School.
Heady days, but of course most people don't realise that actually we've had a number of foreign fixtures. So our first foreign fixture against a school was against Cheltenham College, and our second foreign fixture was against Uppingham. So unfortunately Uppingham aren't on our fixture list at the moment. We hope they will be in the future, but they're coming to our International Sevens in March of 2023 to help us celebrate the Bicentenary.
Well, indeed, and the International Sevens, I guess, is why we're here in part. The whole Bicentenary, but I feel like that's the real flagship event of it because we've got teams coming from all over the world to meet here at Rugby School, play sevens. We saw I don't want to call it a dress rehearsal, but we saw the first edition of this back in, was it 2015 for the World Cup?
No, 2017.
2017. There we go. You see, it's like we've got an expert here. This is why you're here. We saw the first edition of it, a great success. We're now going to see people coming back and a few new faces as well for the Bicentenary. Tell me a little bit about what that event's going to be like, but also what the year as a whole, what it's going to mean to the school, and obviously we'll get into the wider sort of rugby community and the sport itself.
Yeah, sure. That is one of our events, one of about 50 events that we're going to have during the year. Not all playing the game, but an awful lot of the events will play the game. It's a huge thing for us. The first time we did the international tournament was in 2017, which was our 450th anniversary, so that was a great moment. We had sides from Australia, from South Africa, from Canada, obviously from the UK, etc., which was great fun. And we've tried to enhance the tournament this time round. We've invited a lot of schools that the rugby masters in the past, who were under the tutelage of Arnold and then Archibald Tate and then others, who took rugby football to these schools. So we have the likes of Clifton College. Clifton, of course, very, very strong rugby school at the moment, founded by Percival. I think he remained there for 10 years. If you play on their pitch, it's called the Close. We are sitting on the Close at the moment at Rugby School, so he even took some of the nomenclature to the school. And actually, after 10 years, he came back to Rugby School and he became the headmaster of Rugby School. So there's a real association there as well. We have Fettes College coming from Scotland. The first headmaster of Fettes College, I think, was an old rugby, and he was certainly a rugby master, and he introduced rugby football and our Nordian principles into Fettes College. So we're really looking forward to playing on the two pitches behind you. This whole area here, everybody thinks this is the Close and that Rugby School play in the Close. Well, the 15 anyway. We don't actually. We play on what's called Old Big Side. That is the name of the pitch which is closest to us. But this whole area, including the field in the back, is known as the Close. The field in the back used to be called Little Chapel Side, but it's now known as Pointines. And those of you who know your Roman history will know about the Roman marshes of Pointines, and that used to be marshland. And as a consequence of that, that's why we know that William Webb Ellis did something here, or somebody like William Webb Ellis. But we are saying it's William Webb Ellis.
Let's not spoil a good story with whether it might be or it might not be. William Webb Ellis is the man, surely.
He has to be. Definitely.
For that reason, though, Rugby School is, well, for many reasons, but particularly with that in mind, Rugby School is a very special place, and this pitch, old Big Side behind us, is a very special place as well. And one of the things that excites me about the year to come is we're going to have, for the International Sevens, we've got under 11s, under 9s, and we've got vets, we've got England Deaf, we've got so many things, and we're going to be broadcasting a huge number of those on NextGen15. But for so many people to get to experience playing here, I liken it in many ways to actually getting the experience of playing at Twickenham, because it's there are a handful of places in the country and really in the world where you go, that is a place everyone has heard of, everyone knows, and it has real history and meaning behind it. And to be able to spread that with so many people is going to be very, very special.
Yeah, absolutely. We, rugby football's legacy over the last 200 years is that it was started for boys in this Midlands town who were in and part of a very, very wealthy school. And now it's a game that's played by all shapes and sizes, by all different socioeconomic groups, by men, by women, by people who identify as a different gender, and so on and so forth. And it is extraordinary that we're celebrating this great game, of diversity, inclusiveness throughout the world. So we're hoping that we will have the King's Cross Steelers coming to play, the first openly gay rugby football club. We're still trying to finalise that. We have deaf rugby, we have of course women's rugby, we have, as you've already mentioned, under 9s, vets, which is going to be great. You have to be over 35. If you're slightly portly, you're more than welcome. But there will be a few fit ones as well, I would have thought.
You're pushing it there, will there?
Oh, well, probably not, no. And one of the things we want to do is that I remember meeting Gavin Hastings in 2015, which was during the Rugby World Cup, and he was in Rugby actually doing an event for Parkinson's, a charity very close to his family. And I remember talking to him actually on Old Big Side, and he said, I've played in every single major stadium in the world. He said, but I've never ever played here. And he just wanted to come and visit. Yeah. We had Racing Club of Paris, Racing 92 as a night called. They weren't at that time, they were coming to play Northampton, and they wanted to have a tour and do a little bit of training here. And then we had Salzeski, the French hooker, who was playing for the club at the time. I think he now coaches them. And he had his, he was pulling grass off the close and putting it into an envelope so that he could pass this on to his family.
That's incredible.
So it's for many sports in the world, you can't actually say it happened and started here. In rugby football, it started here. It didn't start anywhere else. It started, where the camera is pointing at, where you can see behind our shoulders, and that's really quite something.
Yeah, and it's for me, a lot of what school sport is about, and a lot of what sport is about is it's not what happens on the day. It's not really what happens over the course of a year or a season or a career. It's about what you remember, what those sort of more meaningful bits of it all are, and for everyone that's going to be participating over the course of the next year, they're going to get a healthy dose of that. But what you've really made me think of is that what I'd really like to see is a recreation of the 1990 Calcutta Cup game out here. That's thinking about Gavin Hastings never having the opportunity. I'm just starting to piece together how that might work, and I'm thinking I'd love to see that. Which brings me on to, you're a proud Scotsman. I am surprisingly a proud Scotsman. Despite the accent, although the name Angus is a giveaway. You've ended up here at Rugby School, a place so heavily associated with the game of rugby as a whole, but of course that makes people think of English rugby. How does that sit?
Oh, it sits absolutely splendidly. I love it. I think it's a really important element. When I was growing up, everybody knew the story of Webb Ellis. Everybody knew the story of rugby and Rugby School. To have the opportunity to be the headmaster here is an extraordinary privilege, but with privilege comes huge obligation, not just to the sport but to the boys and the girls in the school, to make this one of the the leading schools in the UK. Well, it already is one of the leading schools, but hugely important that actually we look outwards and not just solely inwards. It's quite funny. Historically, we are told that the captains of rugby used to be written to by the captain of England Rugby to ask permission to wear Rugby School colours. So when you see Rugby School playing, the reason that England play in the same colours is because Rugby School play in those colours. And the tradition used to be that the captain of football, as we call it at rugby, would write back and say, you have permission to wear Rugby School colours to represent England.
One time they said no.
Well, I've always laughed. We've had a couple of Scottish captains of football at rugby in my time. The most recent was Ben Muncaster, who's got a Scotland A cap and plays
Yeah.
for Edinburgh. And we always used to joke that actually he could write back if he was asked again and say no. But quite what colour they would wear, I'm not sure. And I remember one of the very early games that when I coached the Uppingham first team, it may actually have been the first game of the season, was actually on Old Big Side and on the Close, which was a huge privilege. And it was early days of mobile phones, these big brick mobile phones. And I remember phoning up my father sort of from near the chapel and saying to him, "You can't believe where I am." And he said, "Where are you?" And I explained it, and he was so excited about actually coaching one of your, in England for the first time rather than in Scotland. So quite remarkable.
I mean, thinking about the kit and there's a mythical tale that was always done the rounds as I was growing up, and I'm sure it's one of these things that's dripped in a little bit of truth and a little bit of mystique, but there are a number of schools that play in white, and I think the myth was that any school that had some sort of football coding of laws had permission to wear white. Rugby School owned the colour white from top to tail, and England, as you say, had to write and give permission. But the bit that I think was fact was that England couldn't wear white socks and Rugby School could. I think that was always the bit
Myth. No, we wear navy socks like England, so that no myth.
I'm gutted to hear that. That was always basically it was one of those things that you hear it going around and you go, can't be, can it? But no.
There is, of course, the interesting element, of course, is that usually in rugby football, that if you are the home team, and you saw this when Scotland played against New Zealand, they wore the purple with the wonderful coloured Doddy numbers on the back. To support Doddy Weir in his fight against MND. Of course, Scotland were wearing their away strip. So there's a big challenge here, of course, because the tradition is that because we founded rugby football, which is a gentleman's game, technically we should change our kit when we play the likes of Oundle and Uppingham and others, but we don't because we founded the game. And I remember in that first game when I arrived here, I didn't know the tradition. So Uppingham School turned up and we only had white shirts, and I remember saying to the wonderful David Ray, everybody who's associated with Rugby School and Rugby Football of that time will know David, and what a gentleman he is. And I said, well, no, we're the away side, we should actually wear our home kit. And him being such a gentleman is that Rugby Football ended up and Rugby School ended up wearing their away strip to play against us. I think that's why they were.
That's a unique feather in the cap.
I think it is. Yes, I think that's why they were terribly grumpy with me for quite a number of years, bless them. And but what was amusing is that we one of the early times that I was here, Uppingham were playing rugby at that time, and we were having a bit of a conversation, and the Uppingham boys, a significant number, had come and had a lovely meal with my wife and I down at the house, and we came up to watch the game, and I said, look, I think rugby are going to be a little bit stronger than Uppingham, and so we'll see how it develops. And of course, the team that was wearing blue and white scored 3 fantastic tries in the first sort of 10-15 minutes. And then a chap called Max Rhodes from Uppingham came up and he put his arm around him and he said, "Jock," he said, "I thought you told me that Uppingham were rubbish." Well, of course, it was rugby.
In their one away strip.
Exactly.
Of the year.
So who were wearing white. So there we go. It's all good fun.
That's incredible. Well, I mean, we'll see what happens next year. Hopefully, no kit clashes. Next year, of course, 2023. I always get myself in a tangle when I'm thinking about rugby seasons versus calendar years.
Of course.
Such is the work of living in school life and in rugby life. Next year we're coming down to live stream every single game here on our big side, which is going to be every single game. Rugby School are playing all of their matches at home. That's going to be really, really special. But what's going to be really, really special is that means, as we've already said, a whole bunch more teams, a whole bunch more players getting to have that experience and be live, and hopefully people around the country, around the world, and lots of old boys will get to see it. And I guess from a school perspective and from a headmaster's seat, that's one of the really important things, is that connection in such a special year with old boys, old girls, and former players and things, to be able to keep that connection going.
Yeah, it is. I mean, one of the things I would say, not to have a flood, because of course we have a significant number of events happening. But I'll give you an example. We are asking, or Belhaven Hill Prep School from Scotland, they're celebrating their 100th anniversary. Bilton Grange, which is now Rugby's prep school, which we merged with in 2020, are celebrating their 150th. And in November next year, we're having a combined Scotland-Wales team versus Scotland-Ireland versus England-Wales. And Mike Tyndall's already agreed to captain the Wales England side. And we're going to raise money through gate receipts and other things for Cure Parkinson's, which is a fantastic charity. But we're hopefully then going to have, as a precursor to that, Belhaven Prep School playing against Bilton Grange. Brilliant. So if there is another club or another school that is celebrating a particular anniversary that you feel, that there may be a great celebration that could be had at Rugby School and on the field and could be included. We've got a very jam-packed itinerary at the moment, but if we could facilitate that, then that would be fantastic. If we get a flood, please don't email me, email Angus, and he can decide.
I'm available to filter through all emails. It's not a problem. But no, that would be it's brilliant just to see. I mean, I've been in talking to Vicky and PJ and the team about the plans for the year a few times already over the course of the last few months, and it's incredible just how much is actually being packed into such a short period of time. But I think it's also incredible how much the wider rugby community, from World Rugby to England Rugby to Scotland Rugby to all the other unions, they've played ball, and that's really good to see. Rugby can sometimes be a bit of a rugby the sport, that is, can sometimes be a bit of a mess, not helped by social media, but actually for such an occasion as this, it's been amazing to see everyone coming together. And speaking of prep schools and things as well, bringing them in, there's a real spirit of this is something for everybody to celebrate.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Rugby is not an exclusive game. What other sports can you go and watch a Premiership game and then suddenly mix with players at the end of it? You don't do that. And the rugby community is such a close-knit community, and you've seen that. I've mentioned Doddy Weir already, of how the whole community has got behind him, got in front of him, got beside him, because he means so much to us. He's not just somebody who was on a pedestal when he played. He's just been he's just such a great man. And that's the beauty of rugby. I've seen it. If somebody gets themselves into a little bit of trouble or become ill, who've been associated with teams that I've been involved with, they automatically have their former friends, or their friends just gathering around them. And you know what it's like. It's a game. It's a tough old game, and that makes it wonderful. But at the end of the game, your friends, you get on with it. And everybody has a memory, don't they? You'll have memories, Angus.
It's always the thing I say is that I think that the toughness of it, in many ways, is why everyone comes together so well afterwards, because you've all been through something, and you don't want to overhype it, but you've been through a tough experience together. No matter what side of it you come out on, and that is, I think, a huge reason why everyone at the end of the game goes, do you know what? Let's sit down. Let's have a beer, or if you're a schoolboy, let's have a glass of water. And I'm sure that's what they do. It's fine.
Of course, it has always been the case.
Always, yeah, always. I remember my glasses of water fondly. You've produced a book here at Rugby School, Past the Pig's Bladder, which just I think highlights the point we've been making about how much everyone is buying into this. We've got forward by Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, and Sir Gareth Edwards. We've got citations in here from Martin Johnson, from Paul Thorburn. I can just flick through it and find Paul Gustard. There's just so many people that have contributed. It really does go to show the extraordinary efforts that the school has gone through to show off what is an extraordinary 200 years, but also how special it is to everyone out there, and how much people really do basically thank Rugby School for having brought this incredible game to us.
Absolutely. There's one of there's a lovely quote which I've put into a little section that I've written, where the great Cliff Morgan basically said that rugby has allowed him to break bread with the world. And that is absolutely the case. I know I wouldn't be the headmaster of Rugby School if it wasn't for being involved with rugby in the past and having a great love of the game. And the number of different people that I've met throughout the world is extraordinary. With our international sevens, contacting Shawnigan Lake from Canada and saying, would you like to come? And within 24 hours receiving, yes, we'll be there. Contacting Nelson College from New Zealand, where the game started in New Zealand. They also came in 2017. Yes, we'll be there. Contacting sides in South Africa. Yes, we'll be there. Just gives you, the nature of our whole community, the rugby football community that we have throughout the world, and it is extraordinary, isn't it? You turn up in New Zealand or Australia and you find a rugby pub or you find a rugby club just to go and watch. You'll meet like-minded people who will welcome you with open arms.
Absolutely. I've always said that if there's a game that brings people together better than any other, it's rugby, because you can just turn up somewhere and start watching, and people will come and start chatting to you, whether you want them to or not, but they'll come. They'll always come. You've to sort of get a bit more personal with you. You've gone from Strathallan to Uppingham to Ampleforth to Ardingly, now here to Rugby School, and you've been here at Rugby School in what is the most extraordinary period in terms of big events. We have the Bicentenary in 2023. 2017, 450 years of the school. 2015, the World Cup was in action. And of course, Rugby School played such a role in that, in terms of, the RFU rightly recognising that if the World Cup's in England, they ought to include Rugby School as much as possible. But what an extraordinary period the last, what is that, 8 years has been, in terms of Rugby School just being a part of such big events.
Oh no, it's been really huge. You've missed out one really important event though, that Scotland have beaten England more often, or have drawn the game. And I always say, actually we say it in our family, that everybody under the age of 5 in Scotland, under the age of 5 you understand, thinks it's a regular occurrence that Scotland beat England or draw with them. Now that has been absolutely marvellous. So all these other great events actually pale into insignificance with that one.
It's extraordinary, isn't it?
I've got to be careful. I've probably cursed Scotland when they play at Twickenham in February this year, and
I keep thinking, I'm now telling people, well, it's the norm. Scotland now beat England. Every time anyone says that England are the favourites, I'm going, well, there's no recent history to suggest that. But you're right. I mean, in my lifetime, I was born in 1988, and until recently, I'd seen Scotland win twice, and one of them I was 2. So it was a good one though, that one, very good one. But it was extraordinary. We are living in strange times, and very good times for you to be here in England, enjoying that.
Absolutely,
it must be very satisfying.
Well, it is. Yeah, it's a lot of fun actually. I do like teasing the boys and the girls. It was quite interesting in lockdown when England lost to Twickenham for the first time for whatever many years, a very, very long time. I think the early 80s, 1982, or in that region anyway, or 81. And the chaplain had pre-recorded his sermon for the Sunday chapel that was going to go out online. And he commiserated with me, saying that it was a great shame that Scotland had lost at Twickenham. And of course this went out live streamed on the Sunday, and it was too late to change it. So the next morning I had great joy standing under the post over there, reading the gospel in my Scotland top and Scotland scarf, just to explain to them what was going on. But it's good moments. I mean, going back to being here, I think the great privilege I've had in my life is that wherever I've taught, I've been able to be involved with coaching, or at least standing on the sidelines, which I do now. I taught at St Alders Grammar School many moons ago, and was very fortunate to have a side that went to the quarterfinals of the Daily Mail Cup, which was a great achievement in those days for St Alders. And then I went to Strathallan, and I take huge pride. Nothing whatsoever to do with me, but pride through association. I see a huge number of Strathalian boys. The likes of George Horn, now Murphy Walker, and Jamie Ritchie captaining the side, actually playing for Scotland, which is
a real boon on the rugby side,
which is absolutely fabulous. And of course Strathallan are coming here for the international sevens as well. And then I went to Uppingham. I was very fortunate to coach the first team there, and they did very well. I did the same when I was at Ampleforth. And then of course I went to Purgatory. I went to a soccer school
Yes, I've been hearing about this.
Yeah.
What was that about?
Oh, it was an aberration. I loved it. It was a wonderful school to teach at, and but they were very, very good at soccer. You notice I call it soccer. There is only one football, and that's rugby football. Our director of rugby is actually the director of football, for those of you who want to know. And they did actually win the England Schools Cup at soccer, so they were quite good at that. And then to arrive at rugby, and I stand on the sidelines and just take great delight watching boys, and girls play, and they play in a fantastic style. We have a philosophy. William Webb Ellis, of course, took the ball in his arms, which means he must have received it from a kick. He didn't pick it up. That's important. He took it in his arms, so it was kicked to him, and he didn't put his foot to the ball. He actually ran with it, and so our whole game is actually about running with the ball. And we as a school, we'd rather lose 29-30 than win 3-0. The game is about running with the game. So whoever comes next year, whoever wants to come and play on the field, adopt that wonderful tradition of Barbarians rugby and run with the ball, because that's what we want to see. Absolutely,
the finest traditions of rugby school, rugby football, and the game at large. It's a game of running. It's good to see that start to come back. It became a game of running into people for a while, and it's nice to see people trying to avoid them these days.
Exactly.
I guess I don't want to take up too much of your time, so I guess a last kind of thought. Rugby School it's an incredible venue. I mean, we can see it in the background behind us. What's the message to those people that are here, that are going to be here through this Bicentenary year, but also to those that are going to come and visit? What do you want them to take away from it?
It's more than just friendship, certainly, from a rugby perspective, a lifelong memory, having been involved in some of the great events that are going to happen here. But I think actually, just to pick up on that great tradition, we talk about William Webb Ellis taking the ball in his arms with a fine disregard, doing something different. We talk at rugby about having the courage to question, the courage to do the right thing when culture might tell you that that's not the right thing. So we want boys and girls to come here and actually, metaphorically take that ball in their arms, have the fine disregard, have that courage, okay, and to go out, tell the world about rugby football, because it is the best game in the world, but actually go and change the world, with the, like William Webb Ellis did. And of course, remember, he was a Foundation Award boy at rugby. His father was killed in the First World War, and so his mother was able to come to rugby, live in rugby, but couldn't afford the school fees here, and so he came to Rugby School. He was on a free place. He was technically a pauper, and so it just illustrates to you not what you'd expect from rugby, not the type of man or boy from that era that you would expect, but he had the courage to do something different. He had the fine disregard. So come and play some amazing rugby, but go away and challenge the world by being a Webb Ellis to do something different, do something right, and just make a difference. That's what we want.
Absolutely fantastic. And to indulge myself for a moment, anyone who's got a problem with people getting scholarships to school, perhaps we've just learned why they're quite an important thing. William Webb Ellis, we wouldn't have the game without him. He was here as just a local lad. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to indulge myself with just one final question, because 2023 is also a World Cup year.
Yes.
Scotland, how are we going to do?
Marvellously well. I have.
You've obviously not seen the group.
I have seen the group. Yes, Ireland and South Africa. That will be very straightforward. I don't think so. I think it's actually going to be. I don't think you can call who's going to win the World Cup. I think it's always been difficult. I think this year is going to be extremely difficult. Two of the favourites are in Scotland's group, but we've watched Scotland against the All Blacks, and gosh, we could have won that game. How many times have I said that? But it just takes a moment just to break that cycle, and I don't think anybody will want to play Scotland, because if they're on form and it works for them, they are capable of beating everybody. But you see that over the summer, the topsy-turvy nature of the games. But if Scotland don't win it, I've got a little, the old alliance. France are playing some extraordinary rugby at the moment,
lovely stuff,
and playing some great rugby. But I don't mind. Wouldn't it be great to see a South Sea Island side like Fiji look at their potential getting into the semi-final or something like that? That would be marvellous for the game of rugby. Or, amazingly, could they get in the final? Who knows? Vern Cotter, do your magic. We'll see what happens.
Vern. Stern Vern, let's see. Peter Green, thank you very much for your time. It's very
Thanks, Angus.
enjoyable.
Yeah, nice to see you.
Cheers.
Good man. Thank you.